Scary telling.
I've never known anything different than the four walls that surround me. I've never felt the sun on my face, the wind in my hair, or the grass under my feet. My father tells me that the outside world is too dangerous for me, that there are bad people out there who would hurt me. He tells me that I'm safe here, inside our house with all of its locks and alarms. But I don't feel safe. I feel trapped. My days are filled with reading, drawing, and staring out the window at the world beyond. I see children playing in the park across the street, and I envy them. I see birds flying in the sky, and I long to join them. But my father says no, and so I stay inside. The rules in our house are strict. No visitors, no internet, no TV, no phone. My father says that these things are distractions, that they will take my mind away from my studies. He wants me to be smart, to be well-read, to be prepared for anything. He tells me that knowledge is power, and that I need to be strong to survive in this world. I ask him about my mother sometimes, but he doesn't like to talk about her. He says that she was a beautiful and kind woman who loved me very much, but that she had to leave us because of an illness. I don't remember her at all, but I keep a photo of her hidden under my pillow. I look at it every night before I go to sleep, and I wonder what she was like. Sometimes, when my father is out, I explore the house. I try to open doors that are locked, but they never budge. I look for secret passageways or hidden rooms, but I find nothing. The house is a maze of corridors and staircases, with locks on every door and windows that don't open. The only way out is through the front door, and that's always locked too. My father says that we have everything we need inside the house. We have books, we have food, we have water. He says that we don't need the outside world, that it's a dangerous and scary place. But I don't believe him. I want to see for myself. One day, I'm looking out the window at the park when I see a girl my age playing on the swings. She's laughing and smiling, and she looks so happy. I want to be like her. I want to swing on the swings and feel the wind in my hair. So, I ask my father if I can go to the park just for a little while. But he says no, that it's too risky. I beg him, I plead with him, but he won't budge. I start to cry. I can't help it. I'm so tired of being stuck inside, of never seeing anything beyond these walls. My father comes over and hugs me, telling me that it's for my own good. He tells me that the world is a dangerous place, that there are bad people out there who would hurt me. He tells me that he loves me and that he'll always protect me. But I don't feel loved. I feel like a prisoner. I feel like I'm trapped in this house, in this life, forever. And I don't know how much longer I can take it. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Time seemed to stand still inside the house as I went through the same monotonous routine day after day. My only solace was the books that lined the shelves, but even those lost their appeal after a while. I started to feel like a ghost, like I didn't really exist. I felt like I was just a figment of my father's imagination, a character in his story. I wanted to break free, to live my own life, but every time I tried, he shut me down. One day, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I waited until my father was out, and then I went to work. I tried picking the locks on the doors, but they were too complicated for me. I tried climbing out the window, but it was too high up. I tried calling for help on the phone, but it was disconnected. Just when I was about to give up, I had an idea. I remembered a YouTube video I had seen once about how to break out of handcuffs. I had never tried it before, but I had nothing to lose. I went to my father's study and found his old handcuffs. I slipped them on my wrists and tried to break out. It was harder than I thought, but eventually I managed to do it. I felt like a superhero, like I had unlocked a new level of power. I ran to the front door and tried to open it, but it was locked. I started banging on the door, screaming for help, hoping that someone would hear me. But no one came. I tried the windows, but they wouldn't budge. I was trapped. My father came home later that day and found me crying on the floor. He was angry at first, but then he hugged me and told me that he was sorry. He told me that he understood how I felt, that he had felt the same way when he was my age. He told me that he loved me and that he would never let anything bad happen to me. I felt guilty for trying to escape. I felt like I had let him down, like I had betrayed his trust. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling of wanting to be free. I started to become obsessed with the idea of breaking out, of exploring the world beyond the walls of the house. I tried again and again to break out, but each time I was caught and punished. My father took away my books, my art supplies, and my freedom. He locked me in my room for days on end, leaving me alone with my thoughts. But I didn't give up. I couldn't. I needed to be free. I needed to see the world. And so, I kept trying, kept pushing, kept dreaming of a life beyond this prison. As the years went by, my desperation to escape only grew stronger. I became more and more obsessed with the idea of freedom, of seeing the outside world. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing from my life, that I was meant for something more than this. One day, while my father was out, I decided to search his study again. I had looked through it many times before, but this time I found something I had never seen before. It was a small diary, hidden away in a locked drawer. I picked the lock with ease, and then I opened the diary. At first, I thought it was my father's diary, but then I realized that it belonged to my mother. The diary was filled with entries, written in beautiful cursive handwriting. It was like a window into my mother's life, into her thoughts and feelings. As I read through it, I discovered that my mother had been just like me once. She had wanted to see the world, to explore, to be free. But my father had kept her locked up too, just like he was doing to me. She had grown more and more desperate, more and more obsessed with the idea of escape. And then, one day, she had disappeared. There were no clues as to what had happened to her, no explanations. Just a note at the end of the diary that said I can't take it anymore. I have to try. I felt sick as I read through the diary. I realized that my father had been lying to me all along, that my mother hadn't left us because of an illness. She had left us because she couldn't bear to be trapped anymore. As I continued to read through the diary, I found more and more evidence of my father's lies. I saw how he had manipulated my mother, how he had twisted the truth to make her believe that the outside world was too dangerous. I saw how he had used fear to control her, just like he was doing to me. I felt like my whole world had been turned upside down. I had always believed that my father was doing what was best for me, that he loved me and wanted to protect me. But now I saw him for what he really was, a monster. I started to plan my escape, using the clues I had found in my mother's diary to guide me. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to get out of this house, to see the world, to live my own life. But little did I know that my father was always one step ahead of me. He had been watching me, monitoring my every move. And he was not about to let me go without a fight. I thought I had everything under control. I had a plan, I had the diary, and I had my determination. But I didn't anticipate how difficult it would be to put my plan into action. Every time I tried to execute my escape plan, my father seemed to know what I was doing. He would catch me before I even had a chance to try, and then he would punish me. He took away my clothes, my food, and even my bed. I was left with nothing but a small cot and a blanket. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, I started to lose my mind. I started to see things, to hear things, to feel things that weren't really there. I saw my mother's ghost haunting the house, and I heard her voice whispering in my ear. I saw shadows moving in the corners of my room, and I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. I started to believe that I was going insane, that I was losing touch with reality. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped caring. All I could think about was escape, about the outside world, about my mother. I started to obsess over the diary, reading it over and over again, trying to find something, anything that could help me. I saw patterns in the writing, codes in the letters, messages in the words. I thought that if I could just decipher the diary, I could find the key to my escape. But it was all in my head. I was grasping at straws, trying to find meaning where there was none. My father had broken me, had turned me into a shell of my former self. I had become a prisoner of my own mind, trapped in a world of madness and despair. And then, one day, my father came to me with a proposition. He said that he would let me go, that he would unlock the doors and let me out into the world, on one condition. I had to promise never to leave him, never to abandon him like my mother had. I knew it was a trap, that he was just trying to manipulate me again. But I was so desperate for freedom, so desperate for anything resembling a normal life, that I agreed. And so, my father unlocked the doors and let me out into the world. But as soon as I stepped outside, I was overwhelmed by the bright lights, the loud noises, the chaos of the outside world. I didn't know how to react, how to behave. I felt like an alien, like I didn't belong. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, it was over. My father was there, screaming at me, pulling me back into the house. And I knew that I had lost. I had lost my mind, my freedom, my life. I had become just like my mother, trapped in a world of my own making. As my father locked me back in my room, I realized that I would never escape, that I would never be free. I was just another victim of my father's madness, another normal girl lost to the world. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. I fell deeper into despair, into madness, into hopelessness. I felt like there was no escape, like I was doomed to spend the rest of my life in this house, in this prison. But then, one day, something changed. My father didn't come home at his usual time. Hours turned into days, and he still didn't come home. I started to panic, wondering if he had abandoned me, if he had left me to die in this house. But then, I heard a knock on the door. It was a police officer, responding to a call from a concerned neighbor. My father had been arrested for a string of burglaries, and he was facing a long prison sentence. At first, I didn't know what to feel. I had spent my whole life believing that my father was the only person I could trust, that he was the only one who loved me. But now, I realized that he had been lying to me, manipulating me, abusing me. As I stepped out of the house for the first time in years, I felt a sense of freedom that I had never felt before. I was scared, confused, and overwhelmed, but I was also hopeful. I was finally free to explore the world, to live my own life, to be a normal girl. I started to reach out to people, to make connections, to build relationships. I joined clubs, went to events, made friends. I started to see the world through different eyes, to appreciate the beauty and wonder that surrounded me. It wasn't easy, and I still had a long way to go. I had to learn how to interact with people, how to trust, how to live. But I was determined to make the most of my newfound freedom, to create a life for myself that I could be proud of. And as I walked down the street, feeling the sun on my face, the wind in my hair, and the grass under my feet, I knew that I was finally a normal girl, no longer lost to the world.